Good morning. Everybody get a good rest last night? Maybe a good nap yesterday afternoon? I did too, actually. It's great to be back, and thank you for coming. So today is entitled Mouse Traps and the Trees of Life. So I didn't know what the plural, I think I did the correct plural. Is it mice traps, or we'll go with mouse traps here. Just in case you missed yesterday, we talked about there's no place like home and how amazing Earth is. There could be as many as 209 parameters that are finely tuned for Earth and for Earth to have life. We went over 25 of them. And I'm trying to get my notes posted up in the app so that you guys can review them if you would like. So that argument yesterday is called the fine-tuning argument. And I would say a lot of people would say that's probably not the strongest argument because, there's a lot of galaxies, there's a lot of stars. They're just probably, Earth is just lucky. And maybe, but when we look at all those parameters, you have to be really lucky. And science is not currently having a good time finding anything close to Earth. In fact, Mars might be the closest thing that we have, not only distance to Earth, but in qualities, and it's not even closely habitable. So we looked at that. We're in an amazing place here. So today we're going to, and then we talked about air pressure. We did some experiments with air, and how air and water were connected. We're going to see some more of that connection here today. But here I want to challenge you with a very tough question to get started here this morning. So you knew if you were going to come to hear a chemistry professor talk that you might get a very tough, challenging question. All right, so the very challenging question, one that when I ask my college students, the bright and wonderful people that you send to Andrews University, by the way, I'm just curious, how many people went to Andrews as a student? Oh, so many people. How many have kids that have gone through there? Yeah, and I know a number of you, so thank you so much. Thank you for sending them to Andrews. And it's a privilege to be there, and I feel obligated, but also honored and excited to see how my discipline can help encourage our students to believe in a creator. It's overwhelming to me. All right, so what is this really tough question that our college students often get wrong? Maybe there's a little misleading on my part with some crazy answers, but the tough question I have for you this morning right here is, how does a straw work? You think you know. Maybe you know. Does someone want to yell out an answer real quick? Create a vacuum and... Okay, I hear some air pressure. I think we have some scientists here. I usually have multiple choice questions. Now, there's this game out there, I think it's called Balderdash, where you make up definitions. I feel like my life is a game of Balderdash, right? Come up the most convincing multiple choice answers. Don't tell my students. And that they would pick up. So they usually get this one wrong. So we thought we would just try to demonstrate how a straw works right here. So Conrad, we'll need you up here. And we thought we'd just have a really big straw, and Susie's gonna be the brave one. Usually our son Carter's here who likes to go up. I might manage here. We brought in one of the strongest guys I know, or used to be one of the strongest guys.
You're just looking for the weight. The weight distribution.
Yeah, weight distribution here. If you would hold the ladder. Thank you to David Carter who brought it. Susie, go on up. We've got a really long straw here. Yep. And then I might hold the cup down here. It's already here. We'll get you. And so we're gonna. This will hopefully help illustrate the principle. You can go as high as you feel comfortable, dear. Wait, I'm the one with the life insurance here.
She's going to live longer.
Yeah. Just land on me or Conrad, so that would be great. Okay, you feel okay? Okay. Thank you, dear. You're just amazing. Okay. All right, so we're going to see how far you can suck this water up here. And I'll try to hold it. Here it comes through here. We're going to try to get that on the camera. And here it comes. And can you see it, Conrad? Did you make it all the way up there? Oh, it's right up there. Oh, she got it. Wow, that's pretty good. All right, let it down. Oh, that's good. So how far up there? You're probably, so that's probably 7, 8, maybe 10, 11 feet up there. How far do you think you can go? Do you think this depends on her ability, partially, to pull that up? So we often think, I don't know if we can go much higher, so maybe we'll just call that good. So good job here. Let's give her a hand. You can. I'll hold the ladder. It's like getting a one-armed man out of a tree here. Okay. Whoop, got me there. You're good. Water's going everywhere. Okay, so we want to have that in mind as we're thinking about the answer right here with our ladder, because there's a limit of how far you can go up. And it all has to do with, and I think I heard some of that here, is that your body is lowering the air pressure inside your lungs, and that allows, we've got our, over here, that allows the air to push the water. We often think when we're using a straw that we are pulling the molecules towards us, and that's not right. What you're doing you are expanding your lungs, and according to Boyle's law and the ideal gas law, when you expand, and some of you may, ideal gas law, anybody? A couple? Okay. Yeah. Hey, good to see you. Do you have to teach the ideal gas law, Brent? Yeah. Okay. So when you expand your lungs, you are increasing the volume, which lowers the pressure, and it's the air that pushes it in. And in fact, this is how a vacuum cleaner works. By moving the air, we talked about this yesterday, moving air is low pressure, and then the air on the outside pushes things in. So it's air just coming in. It was the weight of the air pushing down on the cup, pushing the water up the straw. And the better the vacuum you can create, the lower the pressure. Usually it's gonna have big lungs, and you can move it up. But there is a limit, because there is a limit of how much air pressure pushes down. And that limit is typically about 30, 34 feet if you could get a perfect vacuum at the top. So while this was a fun demonstration, there is some important consequences there. So the air pushes down, and that pushes it in. So let's keep this in mind, this concept of how water can go up a hill. I want to tell a little story, though, of how we show love. Every day, I want to make a connection, a love connection, where we see how we love each other. And then when we go and see those similar things in nature and in our lives, we can say, God's showing his love to us. Now, I have this young man cleaning here, and try not to bring back too many bad memories for my brother and sister. But we spent 10 years cleaning the doctor's office in Ithaca. And we have Dr. Prouty here. I think it was before Dr. Prouty got there, though. And 10 years, 3 nights a week, the Hayes family would go in for a little extra money and clean the doctor's office. And I have my older brother and younger sister. We would go in and partner with our parents to do this cleaning job. Well, here we thought we were like working so hard, and it was probably empty a few trash bags. Maybe we would vacuum one of the offices in there. And then we're like, we're so tired. And then, of course, our parents worked for another hour and a half. And they were doing most of the work in this partnership of cleaning the doctor's office for many years. And we see that same kind of partnership happening right here with how a straw works. We have a partnership between the person trying to create a vacuum and then the air pressure working to put that up. Partnership of things happening together. And we knew our parents loved us because they did most of the work so that we could have money to go to Adventist education and have a good life there. So we really appreciate our hardworking parents. But all of these things that I'm trying to present here this week is, how did we get here? Are we here by a series of chance chemical accidents that happen and eventually that turned into life? And we'll get deeper and deeper into that. Or is there an intelligent designer that has put things together? And understanding how a straw works can actually help us with that. And so can this idea of a mousetrap. Michael Behe, a biochemist, wrote in his seminal book called Darwin's Black Box. Is anybody familiar with this or read it? Quite a few people. Okay, very nice. In here, he proposed this idea of irreducible complexity. Now, that's a big college word, so we like that. But it just means if you were to take away something, the object would cease to function. If you were to take away anything from that mousetrap, it would cease to function as a mousetrap. Doesn't mean you couldn't use it for something else. And so this idea sort of started to unlock this idea of intelligent design, that features that we see need all of these parts to be there all at the same time. So we'll call it the mousetrap idea. His term was irreducible complexity. There was a lot of arguments by scientists trying to debunk this. His main argument was the flagellum, this little whip-like structure in bacteria, was irreducibly complex, and there was a lot of arguments back and forth. He countered that in his book called A Mousetrap for Darwin that came out a number of years. And I don't think there's been a good counter argument. There's been some attempts, but they would say they've defeated this argument, and I don't think so. But we're gonna go with this idea and see where it can apply in a number of different other areas here today. So I think this is what evolution's or naturalism's convincing lie is, that we see that things could possibly happen. They look like there's connections out there, and through time, and things can start to look designed, but they sort of just change little by little over time. And maybe this could happen, but when we know how something works and all the parts that are needed, this is not convincing anymore when we realize how things work. But the problem is we don't know how things work. But we're entering, I think, in a time of history where we're starting to understand so many things at a very deep level of how they function. And it can often be surprising. So we're going to use trees today to talk about some irreducibly complex systems in trees. They're just amazing. They're fun. I hope you'll find them interesting, if anything, convincing, and at the greatest level, in awe of our designer. How many trees do you think are on our planet? There's a lot of trees. And 50 million, there's probably more than that. We could do a whole clicker thing, but we've got some stuff to do this morning. Any guesses? Yeah, so the teacher, this was then the easy one here, it's E. Last count, 3 trillion trees. Wow. 3 trillion trees, last count. I don't know who's counting these things, but as soon as you get to the end, yeah, exactly. Oh, another one grew, but someone cut. No, these are estimates, of course. And amazing, 3 trillion trees, that's a lot. So the question then becomes, for a tree and for many plants, but specifically trees, how do you move water uphill? In fact, how do you move water up a big hill for some of these very large trees like the sequoias and the redwoods? How many people have actually seen in person the sequoias and the redwoods? Oh, you lucky people, good for you. We finally got to see them here in the last year or two. And we were given some presentations in Northern California, got to drive through the redwoods. They're just amazing. And all of these trees face this problem of moving water uphill. And what we've just already discussed is that there is a limit, because using air and air pressure here, you can really just kind of move things up 30-something feet. So how do you get it hundreds of feet? So we're going to talk about that and try to illustrate some of the ways that trees have done this, and this has been pretty exciting. Now, one of them is to understand that there's pipes inside of the trees, called the xylem and the phloem here, and how they move fluids up and down inside the trees. And I'm not sure I should play this little video. It's got a little jingle here to remember the xylem and the phloem. I did this at Eau Claire, and the kids couldn't get the song out of their head. I don't know, should I play that or? Yeah, okay. All right, just know that I was convinced by the people to play that. We'll just do a little bit, and this will be a good sound test to make sure it's working. And we'll just a little bit here. And it's a good little way to remember the fluids and the flow inside of a tree. Let's see if it's okay.
There are many plants that are considered vascular, with veins running through them, called the xylem and the phloem. The xylem is for the flow of minerals and H2O. The phloem transports sugars so food gets to where it's meant to go.
Xylem up, phloem down.
The xylem pulls the water high up so plants can transpire, moving minerals up the stem and also hydrating them. The xylem is for the flow of...
We'll stop there. You get the idea. You can go and watch that some more. The xylem and the phloem and the pipes, the moving up the fluids. Really catchy little tune. And so really, yes, there are pipes inside. And when I mentioned this in the Eau Claire church, Werner Presnitz, I don't know if you guys know Werner, he's a great woodworking guy. He goes, oh, here's a piece of wood for you. I'm like, what am I supposed to do this? He goes, look, it's like a straw. Now, what I'm going to try to do here, so we're going to come over here, and so I have the piece of wood. So if this doesn't work, it should work, because I was practicing a lot last night. So I have my germs on it now. I was asking if any of the kids wanted to do this, but they kindly said no. But what I'm going to do, so I was thinking, if I were to pull the water up, you might think I was just creating saliva and then spitting it out. So I'm always trying to, think about these things. So I'm going to just I'm going to try to blow through it, see if you guys can see some bubbles. And this is just a piece of wood here, so here you go. You guys see the bubbles? Is that on the camera? There we go. So there are a lot of these pipes running through the tree. So everybody got to see that? Yeah, you're convinced? There are these nice pipes running through the tree. And I probably could use it as a straw. I'd get a good workout if you had to use that. So we'll go past that. So there's pipes in there. So some would say, well, maybe then it's capillary or capillary, depending on how you want to pronounce that, action that's working. When water gets inside little tubes, it can start to climb up. And you can do fun experiments that take a long time. We could have done that one, but you can move water up in some of the dyes. There's a fun little device. It's kind of small, but I thought I'd just take a picture. As the tubes get narrower, water can start to climb up inside of the tube because of the cohesive forces within itself and the adhesive forces where water sticks to the glass. Water turns out to be really sticky. And you're probably saying, no, syrup is sticky. Yes, sure. Water is really sticky to itself. And that property where we want to think about, but it can climb up a tube. But it's actually limited also by air pressure, because air pressure is helping it to move along with the cohesive and adhesive forces that are there. So it actually has a lot of limitations on how high it could take water up. But that's part of it. So capillary action is part of how you can start to move water up through these pipes. But it's not enough. It is not enough. The second part, and this is a great part that I love teaching in my class, general chemistry, is osmosis. And a lot of students think they can learn science through osmosis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this here, right? They'll put their head on the books and hoping the information will move from the book to their brain. But once we understand how osmosis works, it was actually going the other way. And so this is why it doesn't work. So how does it work? There's three main parts to break this down. And actually, we're going to try to demonstrate that here as well. So the water is moving through from the surrounding areas, and it's relatively clean to what's going on inside. And you need a semi-permeable membrane. Well, what's that? A semi-permeable membrane is just some kind of material that has little holes through it. And the only thing that can get through this typically is water. Now, one of the reasons why water is so amazing, and scientists are like, oh, this thing is like one of the greatest molecules, and and it's obviously responsible for life and a lot of things that we do, but we often overlook one of its key properties is that it's extremely tiny. It's one of the smallest molecules out there. 2 hydrogens. Hydrogens are the smallest thing out there, and oxygen. Oxygen's not very big, H2O. But they can slide through these tiny pores in this membrane. Now, making a semi-permeable membrane for water to get through is actually quite hard. But scientists have been able to do it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So there's water on the outside, and inside of the plant, which would be here on the left-hand side, there's sugars in there that the plant's making. There's proteins. There are ions and things. And there is a force that will move the water from the clean area, if you would, although it's roots and there is dirt, yes, and some ions. But there's a lot more on the inside. And so water wants to move from the less dense to the more dense. So if this was the college student putting their head, the dense would be all the information here, and where they don't have the information, it actually would move in that direction. This is why it wouldn't work to put your head on there. So just tell them, take the nap, but you're not going to learn anything by laying your head on the book. So you need something small, number one, like water, and it's one of the smallest molecules out there. And water will naturally flow from what we call the low concentration side to the high concentration side. This is a force called entropy, which we'll talk about more on Thursday. And I would challenge that this force is something God put in place for a number of reasons, and this might be one of them, to move water inside of the tree, inside the plant. And so that just happens naturally, but you've got to have enough good stuff inside so that water will move in the higher concentrated side. And there we go, my PowerPoint animation moving the water in. So it moves from the low concentration side to the high concentration side. There will be a quiz. No, there's no quiz. Wouldn't it be great when we get to heaven? Well, I didn't get that, Dr. Hayes. What do you mean? Okay, let's spend a few weeks going back, and we'll have all eternity to learn chemistry, which I think a lot of students in my class would feel, that sounds about the right amount of time to learn chemistry, eternity. And we only give them a couple of semesters. And so these membranes are not that easy to make, and they're a little costly. You can actually find some man-made ones, these dialysis sacks. You get 10 for $395. And you can probably buy them more expensive or less expensive, and this is what gets used in that unfortunate situation. If someone needs dialysis for their kidneys to help remove waste in their blood, and then they can retain water. And so they can make all sorts of semi-permeable membranes, and we won't get into the science of all that. But there are a lot of semi-permeable membranes out there that you can just go and find very easily, and here is a small list of them. Roots. All of the root vegetables here and plants, all their roots have the built-in semi-permeable membrane. And so I'm going to actually try to demonstrate to you how this works. And this is a fun little experiment. So we're going to build an osmosis system right here. So I was practicing this morning here. So I like to use a drill. My dad is a car mechanic, gave me some tools, and I think he was wanting me to fix stuff, but now I just use them to drill potatoes. So All right, so I'm gonna drill a hole in here, and the reason why is I want to make it very concentrated with things inside here. Then I'm gonna put it in some water, and the water will, and the whole system will sense that it's very concentrated, and it will pull water through, and it will start to fill up a tube that I'm gonna put on top here. This is a lot of fun. You can use carrots, and you can use a lot of different root vegetables. And one year, we actually did osmotic races for the Chem Club. Now, when you see how this works, I think the idea of race might be a little, speed is not one of the greatest things here. But we're gonna see how this works. So I just go ahead, and I've got this sized, because what I need here, and for this to work, I'm gonna put a tube with a rubber stopper so that I have a tight seal. That's critical to be able to move water up. So we'll create a little hole here at the top. Try not to make too big a mess. And so this would probably work without it, but this is gonna be faster. We've often put corn syrup or different things inside. Let's see if I can get a little bit more in there. Okay, and then I'm gonna put some salt. We just need really anything that will increase the concentration. Oh, I think I should have brought a funnel. That would have been a nice thing here. We'll make a little bit of mess, dumping some in there. Maybe I'll get some salt in there. That might be nice. Okay, and it's gone. All right, so I'm getting some salt in there, and need the rubber stopper. And it's hard to see the water, so we'll put a little indicator there, some food coloring. I'll put a drop of that, and a couple drops in there. And I hook it together and set it up. And osmosis, not only do we teach how it works in our class, we teach how much force you can calculate that this would generate. And I'll tell you in a minute here how much we could generate with sugar. So we put this in. And unfortunately, guys, this is super slow. And I'll show you a couple pictures. And maybe we can see it, and I'll let it work overnight. And maybe tomorrow we can see if my osmosis system will work. So I'm gonna put some water on the outside of it here. And eventually that'll start drawing it in, and entropy will start moving water up the hill. Now there is a lot of force there. I usually tell my students how much force first, because then they think this is gonna come spraying out. Because there's a lot of force there. Okay, so you can do this at home. This is a lot of fun if you can find those parts, and you're gonna have some races. So here is something I did in class. Started off at 10 a.m. and then 6 hours later, went up a couple inches. It's not super fast, but osmosis it can be a very strong force though. A couple days later, finally made it to the top of the tube, and it was dripping out. And then if you break the seal and get bubbles in there, it will stop working. So nobody said it was fast, but it is powerful. And one of the keys, once again, to this technology is having small holes only small things can pass through, like a cat door. I was trying to think, what would be a good analogy? Oh yeah, cat doors. The small things can go out. And some may say that this is a perfect idea. Okay. Water is very small. Okay, so how high could osmosis push it uphill? I won't belabor all of the calculations for you. But if you use, my calculations were based on using corn syrup and putting that in there. And I was able to calculate it could push water up over a mile. That's impressive. It can push it up there. The problem is that's under very ideal situation. Keeping high concentrations inside the plant is very unlikely. The reality is going to be a lot lower than that, but it's a very strong force that can push things up very high. And it's actually based on the ideal gas law. Okay, so, but that, for a lot of scientists, we know that doesn't fully explain, it does a lot, but doesn't fully explain how to move things uphill that far. The other part is transpiration, the evaporation of water happening from the leaves. And usually I hear from biologists and others that, yeah, this is what really is pulling it up. It's the pull as water evaporates, it pulls the other water up. Well, but that whole mechanism, that thought is based on, would be lowering the pressure on top, and eventually you could only move that up about 34 feet or so through some tubes. The fourth part, and last part that puts all together, I got approval to show the video. So I'm actually going to show a short video that does a perfect job describing this with the enthusiasm that it needs, is from Veritasium. And he did a video 13 years ago on how trees bend the laws of physics to highlight the fourth area. So I've kind of trimmed it down to as short as I could, and describing how trees actually get it all the way to the top here, and then I'll try to summarize.
Be correct. Scientists who study trees find that the xylem tubes that transport water do contain a continuous water column. So how else could the tree transport water from the roots to the leaves?
They don't suck. They don't use a vacuum.
Okay, so how do they do it?
Squeezing like a cow, like you're squeezing a cow udder all the way up. There's little tree muscles in there.
Yeah. Besides being a giant waste of energy, all of the cells that make up the xylem tubes are dead. What about osmotic pressure? If there is more solute in the roots than in the surrounding soil, water would be pushed up the tree. But some trees live in mangroves where the water is so salty that osmotic pressure actually acts in the other direction, so the tree needs additional pressure to suck water into the tree. Then it must be capillary action. The thinner the tube, the higher the water can climb. But the tubes in a tree are too wide. At 20 to 200 micrometers in diameter, water should rise less than a meter. So how do trees do it? Well, one of the assumptions we made is wrong.
The lowest the pressure can go is a pure vacuum. Pure vacuum. Pure vacuum.
In a gas, this is true. When you eliminate all of the gas molecules, the pressure is zero, and you have a perfect vacuum. But in a liquid, you can go lower than zero pressure and actually get negative pressures. In a solid, we would think of this as tension. This means that the molecules are pulling on each other and their surroundings. As the water evaporates from the pores of the cell wall, they create immense negative pressures of minus 15 atmospheres in an average tree. Think about the air-water interface at the pore. There is 1 atmosphere of pressure pushing in and negative 15 atmospheres of suction on the other side. So why doesn't the meniscus break? Because the pores are tiny, only 2 to 5 nanometers in diameter. At this scale, water's high surface tension ensures the air-water boundary can withstand huge pressures without caving. As you move down the tree, the pressure increases up to atmospheric at the roots. So you can have a large pressure difference between the top and the bottom of the tree because the pressure at the top is so negative. But hang on, if the pressure at the top is negative 15 atmospheres, shouldn't the water be boiling? Yes, it should. But changing phase from liquid to gas requires activation energy. And that can come in the form of a nucleation site, like a tiny air bubble. That's why it's so important that the xylem tubes contain no air bubbles. And they can do this because, unlike a straw, they've been water-filled from the start. This way, water remains in the metastable liquid state when it really should be boiling. It's just like supercooled water remains liquid even though it should be ice. So you could say that the water in a tree is supersucked because it remains liquid at such negative pressures. And why are trees moving all this water up the tree? I want you to make a guess. Say it out loud. For photosynthesis? Actually, no. Less than 1% of the water is used in photosynthetic reactions. Any other ideas? Okay, what about growth? Well, 5% of the water is used to make new cells. Well, so what happens to the other 95% of the water? It just evaporates. For each molecule of carbon dioxide that a tree takes in, it loses hundreds of molecules of water. Whoa. Can you believe how amazing this is? Trees create huge negative pressures of tens of atmospheres by evaporating water through nanoscale pores, sucking water up 100 meters in a state where it should be boiling but can't because the perfect xylem tubes contain no air bubbles, just so that most of it can evaporate in the process of absorbing a couple molecules of carbon dioxide. I will never look at trees the same way again.
Amen. Okay. So, did you guys get all of that? I've had to watch that like a bunch of times to go, like, whoa, negative pressures? What? And stretching. So a lot of that just comes down to this, once again, this amazing interplay between water that's sticky to itself and the air pressure. It's air pressure that's pushing it up. It's just that water can create this negative pressure and help pull it all the way up. And that's some of the key technology, and it all has to be there at the same time, a big mousetrap. No leaks. Any plumbers out there? Who loves plumbing? Okay, you want to come over to my house? I hate plumbing. I can literally say that I hate plumbing. I think my wife hates that anytime I try to, it never works. There's something wrong with me. I'm like, okay, hook it up, and then, it's leaking. And for a tree not to leak, to me, is absolutely amazing. That right there, I'm going, that needs intelligence way beyond me. But one of the things that was said there that was very interesting is 95% of this water is lost to the air. And then I found another video. So 1 minute here. You got to let's put all these ideas together. The biotic pump. Listen to this. Ooh, here we go.
While there is more water in the ocean than in forests, forested areas have more water vapor in the air. This is because forests, especially healthy ones, have a lot more surface area for water to evaporate off of. Multiple canopy layers, shrubs, moisture-laden ground are all full of water which transpires or evaporates entering the air. As a result, we find much more water vapor in the forest even when there is less total water. The ample amount of water vapor in the forest rises and condenses into clouds, changing from gas to liquid. This creates a drop in air pressure, which allows even more vapor-filled air to rise. This creates an upward air current, which in turn creates a horizontal current closer to the ground. This sucks in air from higher pressure areas, like the air from over the ocean. This air contains some water vapor, which increases the total amount of water in the forest, leading to more frequent rainfall. Essentially, forests create a giant constant air current that attracts moisture from hundreds of miles away. This is how we find so much water so far from the ocean. The forests bring it in. This process is known as the biotic pump, and it shows how traditional wisdom was right all along. Forests really do bring the rain. So as more forests are clear-cut, the more extreme become the droughts, and the more expansive become the deserts. If we want to thrive on this...
All right, so the concept there is that, and there's some really nice videos, people trying to help us understand this process, but the trees are putting up so much vapor and water into the air, it actually is moving, if you think about it, with the air currents, will help move the water across the land. And when we take away the trees, we're taking away the ability of the water to really move efficiently across the land, and that can lead to large areas of desert. So the trees are acting as sprayers. We need to rethink how we look at trees. Yeah, they're beautiful and they're cool, and the wood and paper, and we get fruit and stuff, but they're large sprayers. And they are really large. They can be water pumps. So when we see a tree, they're actually just amazingly designed water pumps and water sprayers as part of their function. If you were to land on a planet and you saw a bunch of sprinklers and water pumps, you would go, I bet there's people here. But if we were to land on a planet, or we're on a planet where trees are like, isn't nature amazing? It can build itself. Because that's what we see. But when we understand all of the science that goes to moving water uphill over 34 feet because of the 15 pounds per square inch that we have, you can't move water up that high. But you can if you build the right system. And for me, that requires intelligent design to build that system. You need the membranes, which are really hard to create. You need to make sure there's the right concentration inside. And the pores and the leaves and the columns have to be the right side with water. So there's so many parts that have to be there at the same time. Thus the mousetrap concept, irreducibly complex. So just the concept of moving water that we've spent our time thinking about here is, I think, part of this irreducibly complex system that we see in plants and trees. Another, hopefully not trick question, where do trees get their mass from? For many years, people that, well, it's the dirt. It just pulls in that dirt and builds the mass, but that's not true. Where do they get their mass from? Water is part of it, and carbon dioxide in the air. So it's the CO2 and water that are used to build the tree. That's why the soil doesn't just disappear around the trees. It's not really using that much of the soil. But you got to keep watering them. and it uses the CO2, which we call the food, for the plants. So what do they make when you put it together? They're actually just making sugar. All plants just make sugar. And they do that with photosynthesis here. So, when we think of plants, we should be thinking sugar. And that process is from photosynthesis. And we're just going to dive into this briefly and come back with another amazing idea that we can think about. Now, photosynthesis has been well studied, and we're not going to go too deep into it. I just want you to realize some of the parts that are involved. There's some light reactions where light is absorbed, and then there's this thing called the Calvin cycle, where it takes the CO2 and combines the things to make the sugar. Inside the light reactions are incredible machines called photosystem 1, photosystem 2. And I just want you to realize how many parts there are. You don't have to understand how it all works. There are 417 parts in photosystem 1 that we understand how it works. Now, can we recreate it? No, that's really hard, but we've modeled that. They've been X-ray crystallography to understand where all the parts are and how they're arranged. I spent a lot of my time in graduate school understanding how light can move electrons and do things that are very similar to what happens into a plant. 417 parts. And if you just misalign these parts, it will stop working. Photosystem 2, almost 100 parts there. More chlorophyll and beta carotenes, all sorts of things. All these systems are extremely fragile. In fact, this is a paper from my PhD advisor in grad school with one of his collaborators, Michael Siebert, and they were studying the photosystem 2, and one of the people who had to do the work was me. And so at the very end, I got my name there, Ryan Hayes. Now, acknowledgments. Now, I didn't write the paper, so I didn't get my name up there. So I was happy I was the grunt doing the work. I was taking a laser and trying to hit photosystem 2, and I could get a little data because it was falling apart every time I started hitting it with light. All these systems are very fragile, and they fall apart, and there's hundreds and hundreds of parts that have to come together. Let's talk about one of those parts, chlorophyll. Where does the plant get its chlorophyll? Now, if you want chlorophyll, you're going to go eat some spinach, right? You're going to go eat some plants. Where does the plant get it? Is it in the soil? They just pull it out of the dirt? Nope. They make their own chlorophyll. So I'm not going to go through this may seem like a lot of science to you, but trust me, it goes way, way deeper and a lot more information. So I tracked, because scientists have been studying this now for decades and decades, and I went through and I tracked how many steps from carbon dioxide and water to chlorophyll. 36 steps. And they all involve the incredible, starting reactants, and there's usually an enzyme that's in there to help put some steps together. And I call these little machines, and it's putting it together step by step by step. And each one of those steps needs energy to take and put these things together to build this wonderful chlorophyll molecule. All these little reactions and machines in there I call them machines, but they're enzymes. They need power. So where do they get their power from? Well, it's usually ATP, which gets started by chlorophyll absorbing light. So all of these things need energy, which originally comes from the sun, with the light being absorbed from chlorophyll, and then 36 steps later, it makes chlorophyll. So wait a second, which one came first? The chlorophyll to absorb it so they can make all the energy so they can make chlorophyll. This is called a chicken and egg situation. We needed chlorophyll, so the energy was there to power all the machines so that it can make chlorophyll. Whew. If your brain's not hurting now, just wait. No, that's enough. So that we see this all the time as we look deep and we pull back and we see how things are made. It's just chicken and egg. We need this part to make that part, but I needed that part to make this part. And all of that to make sugar. So when you see cows and horses out there, why they're enjoying the grass and stuff, it's just mainly sugar. They have the enzymes to break it down and get the energy there. So can termites. And I think our dog, he likes to chew on wood, but I'm not sure he can get energy. We cannot get energy from it. We don't have the right enzymes for that. But all of that to say, when you look at a tree, I hope you can now say, oh, they're just chemical factories. When a plant needs something, it makes it. Carbon dioxide, water, a few minerals here, follow the recipe instructions. We get a lot of chemicals from plants because they're amazing chemical factories. Sugars, of course. Starches to make food and paper, which is just a form of sugar. Cellulose to build things, which is another form of sugar. Oils, fats, vitamins, protein, all sorts of cleaners, vinegars and soaps, gum and rubber, dyes, flavorings, fragrances, pesticides, pain relievers. Aspirin comes from the willow tree bark. Over 100 medicines, and of course they make oxygen to help oxygenate our planet. Are you convinced? If I were to tell you, please find the chemical factories on this picture. I see 2 chemical factories, one to the left and a set to the right here. We have to start seeing trees and plants for what they are. They're beautiful, they're amazing, but they're chemical factories. Because the chemicals that we need, when I say chemical, I know most people think, oh, chemicals are bad. No, there's just chemicals. There's good ones and there's bad ones. We need the good ones to keep us alive and sustain us. Water's a chemical. Sugar's a chemical. They're all things that we need, but in the right proportions. If we were to look at a chemical factory and go, that's not natural, why are we looking at trees and going, that's natural? There's nothing natural about a tree. Nature's not natural, you guys. It's as unnatural as it comes. We're just so used to seeing it, and they grow right in front of us, and we do nothing but add water. Oh, it's amazing. It's because it's been automated. There's nothing natural about a tree. If you were to land on a planet and see a water sprinkler and a chemical factory and sprayers, we'd go, oh, there's people here. But when we look at a tree, it's like, oh, wow, nature's wonderful. No, God is wonderful. He built all of these things. He's the master chemist and the engineer, thinking about all the components so we don't have to. But in heaven, if you want to, you can learn it. You can learn some of it here now. When I see a chemical factory, I think intelligent design, all the ingredients that are needed, all the energy that's needed at the right time, the coordination, the quality control. And what do you do if you make waste, and how do you handle that? And you always need a supervisor to do that. What else do trees make? They make all sorts of things. Fruits, right? Nuts, amazing things that we love and use all the time. Barks, leaves, seeds, there's so many things. And we know the purpose of a seed is to make more of the plant. And so inside, deep inside of a tree, or of a plant, is a little, inside of a seed is the little plant. And it's amazing when we look at that and the nutrients that it needs. But as science has uncovered what's actually inside all this, there's a lot of things inside there that I simply summarize as a baby in a box. When our kids were little, we'd go down in the basement. Of course, the kids don't want to play with the expensive toys, right? Nope. Where's the box? We want to play with the box. And so Christiana and I, we'd get together and hey, Christiana, what if there was like a toy you could get that was a real baby and it would come in a box? I said, could you be that baby? I don't think she would do this for me now, but I said, let's get in a box. And then we'd open the box and go to Cadence. Cadence, we got a new delivery. It's the baby in the box. And we'd open it up, and Christiana would stand up and blink her big, beautiful blue eyes, and this is the baby in the box. And then we'd have to sing a little jingle. It's the baby in the box. She pees, she poops, she talks, she walks. I don't know, we're trying to come up with something. It's the baby in the box. So when I say that, I'm thinking of all the fun stuff that we did when the kids were little and using our imagination. But what do you need for that baby to stay alive, right? They need food. And they need all sorts of foods, the right nutrients that are there. Diapers, probably should put in there. Do you know that the seed has to take care of the waste that gets generated? There's a whole waste handling system. There's communication, knowing to trigger a growth when there's enough water. And there's just a lot of things that are going on inside the seed, which is just a baby tree plant inside of that. So the baby in the box. And there's things to cut all the food. And you wouldn't put a knife in there with a baby, but there's enzymes and things in a seed so that all the food can be readily available for the little seedling to take off. We won't be selling babies in the box, by the way, just so you know. I do like to start businesses. All right. So how many seeds do you need to make another plant? This is what blew my mind as well. And we encounter this, but I just wanted us to think again how amazing God is. All right, there's, I don't know, half a dozen seeds inside of an apple. And you really just need one of them to take off. But of course, having a number of them is great, so you can ensure that another tree would get built. And we get this notion that evolution is all about the one living system trying to make the next one. And sure, we get that. We want the reproduction to take place there. So apples seeds germinate around 30% of the time, but most other things germinate more than half of the time. And if you think of all the seeds that a tree will produce over its an average life cycle here, if they're producing somewhere between 500 and 1,500 apples in a season over 35 years before they sort of stop being productive, and 5 to 10 seeds per apple, kind of average some of that, you have a chance of making 100,000 other trees. That seems ridiculous in terms, that's like, okay, we got to make sure we survive. Let's have 100,000 kids. Oh, was Christiana here for the baby in the box? Oh, do you remember that, Christiana? No, man, you were too little. I remember, like it was yesterday. I feel like this is excessive. You don't need 100,000 opportunities to make another tree. That, my friends, is the abundance that is built into all the plants. All of that nutrition and food that comes from the plants is not there. Well, of course, reproduction is definitely intelligent design, but all of that is for the abundance to feed this planet. And that matches Scripture perfectly. When God said, let the earth bring forth grass and the herb that yields the seed, the fruit tree that yields the fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself, the baby in the box. And so it was. And the earth brought forth grass and the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit and whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good on day 3. Now think about what the tree needed on day 3. It needed water, right? Day 2. But it also needs the air pressure, also day 2. And it needs light, day 1. So all of those things scientifically are incredibly important that they can't, light, air, water. Okay, we can put in trees now that are abundant in their production to feed the entire planet. It's amazing. I've been talking about trees. I'm trying to learn trees because I'm a chemist, and so I've been trying to do all of that. And so far, at Eau Claire, as Sabbath School superintendent, I've had almost 20 talks on trees, just looking at a little bit more detail than I'm giving you here about trees. And we're going to talk about one last thing and how they heal their wounds, and then we'll wrap it up. And there's so many things I've learned, though, about trees and their abundance. We've talked about a few of those. Oh, their communication between trees. They talk to each other using chemistry. Trees went there, and even plants, they're starting to understand that if a threat comes in at one side of the forest, they can start talking with each other through their roots. And trees deeper in the forest can start producing different chemicals inside their leaves so they become bitter if it's like a bug that's coming through. And they can start defending themselves by communicating and talking with each other. This happens even in fields. As pests come in, the plants start changing their chemistry. We are not tapping into the technology because we think we know better. Oh yeah, we can just throw some chemicals on there, some Roundup. No offense to the farmers here, because that's how we do it. But maybe there might be another way if we could understand the technology. Instead of saying that we're better, let's say, God, you put all of this in there, that these things are supposed to work together in a partnership. How do we do that? I don't know. But that's what we should be spending our time. Instead of saying it's broken and it was chance that sort of made all this stuff, we know better. How do they work together? Lord, what did you have in mind? Trees have taught me so many things, especially that there's at least, I've identified 15 things that need to come together all at once in order for even a little cell to survive. We'll talk about some of those later. So where's the higher technology? Right? If I said the word tech to someone recently, and they're like, there's no technology in plants. I said, you're just not looking at it right. We understand technology when it looks like a robot, a computer, and, our phone. That technology that's in plants is way far and above. We have to, of what we're doing. Renewable, recyclable, low carbon impact. We're trying to get there. And this is what we're coming up with. When we think of day 3 and all of the technology that's in plants, we need to recognize that all of that needed to be there at the same time. Time will not build a plant. No matter how many physicists say, well, you just take some simple chemicals and shine light on them, you'll get a plant eventually. No, you need so many parts that need to come together. And we now know this, and we kind of knew some of that even over the last few decades, but those concepts of the mousetrap, irreducible complexity, understanding all those parts are coming now together at this time in history so that we can understand and appreciate there's a creator. And the scientists have to acknowledge that. There is a creator who built all of this technology that's right in front of us. Let's go to one last amazing thing that trees do. Self-healing products. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a car or drive, got an accident. Don't worry, it will fix itself. We don't need Allstates or mechanics. Wouldn't that be nice, Rob? Can we start? You're not building any self-healing cars because you'd be out of a job. Yeah. We would love that. We would think that would be like amazing technology that's far and above what we can do. But, scientists are starting to do some like self-healing concrete. Well, that's at least something. But when we see self-healing happen in front of us, we're like, oh yeah, that's nice. You see, when a tree encounters some kind of injury, brokenness, a pest, something, a break, immediately they send a bunch of chemicals to seal off the wound. They try to compartmentalize, create a barrier. Then they start building some new wood to separate that and put it off to the side. It's called callus formation. You'll see that a lot on trees. They're just protecting themselves with an intricate 4-step process. I call it 4 steps. There's probably a lot more than that. In these little ribs right here is this new type of wood that protects the rest of the living tree. Lots of chemicals going back and forth, send stuff here, build this there. Okay, we need some more things here, and it's all regulated with chemistry inside. It's like the trees in all of us are built with these wound survival technology inside of us. Also requires a lot of design. You got to know what you need to fix ahead of time, bring in all the right materials, try not to do anything wasteful or useless. You got to know when to turn it on, when to stop it. All that requires intelligence. And you got to do this while the tree is still growing. You can't just stop it for a minute and try to heal it. A lot of our problems in this world actually started with trees. And I don't know if Stephen Bohr is going to get to some of this. You guys been coming to his meetings? Great stuff. I've been watching Stephen Bohr. I just got to give a shout out to Stephen Bohr. I started listening to his Cracking the Genesis Code about a little over 20 years ago. And man, that just stirred my heart. I love his analytical approach, just breaking down scripture. Did you see this connection and this connection? Genesis to Revelation. And he brings up this point here about the trees in the garden. Right? The tree of knowledge of good and evil, where our first parents had to make that decision. Am I going to eat from that tree or that tree, right? And God said, no, you can eat out of every tree except for that one. Of course, we know about the tree of life that they could be eating from. And after they sin, of course, God's saying, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Now at least he put his hand out and eat from the tree of life and live forever. They couldn't have that. So they had to remove the tree of life. But it all started with trees. You can eat of all of them, except for the one. And I'm not going to go through the argument that Stephen Bohr makes, because I feel like he might be doing this. I don't know. I should have talked to him. But he makes this connection, and I hope he goes through this, because he's talking about the Sabbath and Genesis. I feel like he might be. I hope I'm not stealing any thunder. But he makes this connection between trees, the test that Adam and Eve had with that tree, and how it is exactly the same as the Sabbath test that we all have. Who's the creator? Who's in charge? Who are you going to trust? And that same test there with the tree is maybe what we have with the Sabbath. Oh, I got my phone here. You see, we also have a wound healing kit that was provided for us with a tree. And I thought I'd just read a few verses from Isaiah 53 here this morning to remind us the wound healing process that God did for us. By hanging on a tree, of course in Deuteronomy I think it is, talks about how hanging on a tree is a cursed thing, and Jesus hung on a tree to take our curse. Isaiah 53, 1-5, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground. I love this analogy here for Jesus, going back to trees, these precious technology that he put here. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. We do some of these things when we look around and we recognize and we see trees and we see plants. And I know you guys don't do this, but a lot of our world is doing this and going, it's just nature. God made these things, and we're despising him when we go, this easy, just give it time, it will happen. So we apologize, dear Lord, for making these wrong assumptions and all of that sin that we carry. In verse 4, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteem him stricken, smitten by God and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. God's love connection to us is wrapped up in the story with the trees here. We made the bad decision. We thought we were doing our part, and we've messed up. We thought we were helping like we were trying to help our parents. We probably did more to make our parents' lives hard when they were cleaning the doctor's office. And just like God recognizes that we have messed up, we're trying to do our part, but God comes in and does his part to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And God is just like that. It's this partnership. And I love that he has this partnership with us here. That when we do things like the straw right here, we think we're doing all the work. And if I suck harder, I will get it to come up here. No, you're in a partnership with this invisible, powerful force called air to help move the water up. You are in partnership with your life with this invisible, powerful force that wants to be there every day and every minute of your life. We just have to ask, Lord, please walk with me. Be with us in this beautiful place that you've created. Yes, we've made poor decisions. We've sinned. The tree of life has been taken away from us. I wonder what was in the tree of life. Oh, and I love that Stephen Bohr talked about it last night. And so I'm going to kind of end near that one of those same thoughts in Revelation 22, 1 and 2, where the tree of life comes back again. And we'll get to eat of it once a month. And I love how he explained that. We're going to come back once a month because there'll be a new fruit there. It's amazing to have trees that produce fruit, but they have a tree that produces 12 different types. Amazing. And when we see those trees and the amazing thing, I hope we won't go, well, that's beautiful, but we'll say, Lord, what you have made, your creation is amazing. You have defied the laws of nature, and you've put these things together so that we can have amazing food in abundance. And whatever is in there and whatever God provides will help us stay alive forever. We won't be immortal on our own. We'll be able to live forever because of what God does for us. And I hope that when you now walk outside and you look at a tree, you will be hearing its loud voice crying out, I am made, I am created, I am not here by chance. Worship your Creator who made me in this awesome technology. Let's stand and thank the Creator for the amazing trees and plants that are all around us. And tomorrow we're going to go a little bit deeper and think about the other amazing things that He does for us that are unseen, and they're just amazing, and we need to hear these things. So let's trust in God just like the plants do. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for these amazing people to come out here and hear the wonders of what you have done inside of plants, the technology that's there that defies physics and chemistry to provide all the things that we need, water up in the air and food in our belly. And we just water and pick it and weed and do a few things, but it's nothing compared to what you're doing. We do our little part, and you do your huge part to sustain us, and most of all, to save us. We trust you with every breath that we're doing right now. Can we trust you with our lives and every decision that we make? Can we just turn our lives over to you, our great Creator? I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.